Change affects people more than what most realize. They may not be able to put their finger on it, but change disrupts a comfort level in most people, whether they realize it or not, and that affects the culture of the organization.
Are you looking for free tools that accelerate your business? Try self-implementing Summit OS, the ultimate business operating system. Summit OS will help you empower your team, execute like hell, and dig a moat around your business. Go to stevebreda.com/tools and download free, simple worksheets that help you grow your business. Alternatively, get matched with a Summit OS guide and take your business straight to the top of the mountain. Good day, dear listeners. Steve Breda here with the Management Blueprint podcast. And my guest today is Marcus Hamaker, the CEO of Boost USA, a consulting firm that helps you simplify your projects, optimize your processes, and streamline your organization. He is also the host of the Pursuit of Value podcast. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am super pumped to have you. It's going to be a great episode. And we are going to start as usual with the why, because that's what powers great entrepreneurs. They have a strong why. So what is your personal why, Marcus? And what are you doing to manifest it in Boost or any of your businesses?
Yeah. So my personal why is just to make companies better. Ever since I was younger, growing up in the family business, watching my dad work hard, I'm very intrigued by business, and it's really interesting to me why one business can succeed exponentially and another business really struggles to get off the ground. And so what we do at Boost USA, what my podcast is about, the pursuit of value, is really helping small businesses be better. Real simple. And I also believe that small business has the power to change the world. I believe that business is and can be the greatest force for good in the world today because of just the entity and the formation of it all. So not only what you can do with your employees internally, but how you can embrace the environment that you're in, wherever that's, in Italy, whether it's here in the United States. You have the ability and the responsibility and the opportunity to impact wherever your business sits. And so I really love small business.
Yeah, and small businesses are always exposed to market forces, and there's no way to take it easy, and you always have to strive to be competitive and make a profit, and definitely is a powerful force for
Right.
reducing waste. And I'm making this point because one of the things that Boost does is to apply lean principles. Tell me a little bit about the Boost method that your company, your group developed, and how do you bring in lean?
Yeah. So when we talk about lean, it really has to do with value, and it has to do with defining what is valuable to the company. So what's valuable to a manufacturer might be very different to what's valuable to a service company, right? So in our Boost method, we always want to start with defining the future picture. What is success to that company? Or more simply, what is the solution to the problem that they're running into? So you define the future picture, you define the targets, you build the roadmap, and through that whole process of defining the value, you also want to throw out what's not valuable, and that's where it lines up with lean. And we always really try to focus on making every step, every process as efficient as possible. And that's what's really important. And that's what we do really well at Boost USA.
Mm-hmm. So what's the process for improving the process?
Well, again, it really depends on each person's issue. Oftentimes, we're brought in to solve a problem, and that usually happens at the project level. Sometimes we're brought in just for strategic planning and so on. But it really depends on what specifically is going on. And oftentimes, and just full disclosure, the problem is really just a lack of alignment or communication within a team. It's not necessarily this big glaring thing. It's the fact that not everybody's on the same page. Not everybody has the same motivation. Roles and responsibilities aren't defined and they're not clear. And then the communication platform is not efficient. So Really, it's just getting everybody on the same page and saying, okay, are we all tracking the right way? Are we all heading in the right direction? If not, let's stop. Let's make some adjustments and move forward. So it's very problem specific. It's very organizational specific. What we've learned over the years is organizational alignment and communication are two of the biggest issues. It's not necessarily the project. It's not necessarily the thing that they're working on.
Mm-hmm. So how is the boost method different from EOS and scaling up and I don't know, McKinsey and Company, more of a management consulting? So what's the unique attribute of the boost process?
Yeah. Again, personal opinion. I'm not familiar with all of them, but what I've seen in my consulting career is that what we do with the Boost method is we approach everything at the project management level. We approach everything as project managers, and it's very much that we view everything through a project manager lens, PMP, Lean, CAPM. Our project managers, our consultants are certified. So we look at it differently. We're not just stepping into it going, okay, we're going to fix this, fix this. We're very specific on the roadmap, what's valuable, what's lean, what's necessary, what's not necessary. So it's very methodical on how we approach it. And then each and every week, we have a session with all the stakeholders where we're aligning everybody. It's never just a report that we send out. We come together and we are talking strategic alignment with every single stakeholder. And then we're allowing the people, the stakeholders that we're talking to, we enable them to report up to their executives, to the people that they report to. So it's very methodical in how we do it. It's not just hey, we're doing this, throwing it out at you. There's always a purpose behind what we do. Again, because we're always focused on what's going to bring value. We understand that there's a lot of noise. And so when we step into a company as a third party, we certainly do not want to add to the noise. We want to add value as fast as possible. And that's one of our metrics. What is the fastest time to value when we step into a corporation? And oftentimes, just no need to hide the secret sauce here. It's just helping people communicate better.
Mm-hmm. Fastest time to value. So how do you figure that out? Is this that you have multiple problems that could potentially solve, and then the low-hanging fruit that you're going to start with, or how does that work?
Logically, going after the low-hanging fruit is the easy part. And we see that in the discovery sessions. We see that relatively quickly. But what we really want to quantify is, can we see a difference in how the team, the stakeholders are behaving? And I'll use an example. We had one project recently where we went into it, large project, multiple stakeholders over, it's going to end up being roughly a 2 to 3 year project. And right from the beginning, we saw that nobody was aligned. I mean, this guy didn't know what this person was doing. She didn't understand what was going on there. Then there's people over here going, who is this? Who's this company Boost? What are they doing here? So like, whoa, hold on a second. Bring them all together. And one of the simplest things we did is we developed a template for them to run a meeting. Simple. It was that simple. So when they were to start a meeting, we gave them a very specific set of protocols to go through, laying out the agenda, touching on what happened the last meeting, any calls to action that needed to get done. And so we were able to see that they came to value quickly, because the next meeting that we observed, they went right through it. Then the next one, they went right through it. And so all of this chaos that was going on really subsided just in a very simple, you know what, let's give them a methodology. Let's show them how to use it, why it's important. And so that was one of our fastest time to values, is because everybody went from chaos mode to like, oh, okay, this meeting is going to actually make a difference. We're having it for a specific purpose. And what we want to get out of it, we will get out of it, as opposed to most meetings where they just kind of show up, people come together, they waste time, they walk away like, what just happened there? And that's not what we want.
That's great. So Marcus, the way you approach clients, you told me about this 60-minute discovery session that you run.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that it had a very specific structure. I think there were 5 steps to it. Share this with our audience, what it looks like and how it's powerful.
Yeah, well, it's really 5 areas that we focus on, and I touched on 2 of them already. The first one is organizational alignment, and that's typically a company will, at the end of the year, they'll establish their next year goals, strategic plan, right? And who does that go out to? If you're not in the company, let's say the CEO puts it together and maybe the executive team gets it, but maybe the people in manufacturing or wherever, not everybody sees the executive plan. Or if everybody does see it, they don't know how it applies to them each and every day. So super important that we establish what is the goal of the company, what is the future picture, and what is happening in that organizational alignment. And real simple, it's looking at the org chart. Is it updated? Does it make sense for today's company? What does that future org chart look like when we're at the end of this plan that we're on? And then looking at the roles and responsibilities. As a consultant, one of the first things you learn to do is just to talk to the employees, just get a feel for the culture, find out how everybody's jiving. And you'd be surprised that most employees don't understand how their day-to-day tasks impact the goals and the vision of the organization, and that's pretty common. And so organizational alignment's number one. Communication, always number two. Operational procedures, standard operating procedures, that's where we kind of dig into the processes. That's number three. Number four is change management. This is something that I think a lot of people don't understand, is that in today's business environment, there is always some component of change that is happening inside of an organization. New product, new service, new certification, AI, digital transformation. There's always some component of change. New employee, right? You name it, there's a change going on. Change affects people more than what most realize. They may not be able to put their finger on it, but change disrupts a comfort level in most people, whether they realize it or not, and that affects the culture of the organization. So we always want to address the change. And then lastly, and this is more specific, but it's project controls and project support. So any sort of internal company project that's going on, if they're having issues with that, we want to address that. And so when we look at those five categories, we can, within an hour, determine what needs to happen, especially if the company doesn't know. And we've had that situation where like, I don't even know where to start. So we're like, okay, let's start at org alignment. Let's look at your org chart. And usually we can camp there for a good 30 minutes. And then the next 30 minutes is on communication. And then and we got enough out of those two to put a scope of work together to help them get out of their pickle.
And then after, let's say you run a project, you fix the communication issue or the alignment issue, whatever it is, then do you go back and do another 60-minute audit to see what's the biggest lever becomes after the first one are too clear?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, oftentimes we're brought in for something very specific, whether that's a UL certification, ISO certification, or it's a new plant industrialization, new product line, whatever. So we come in very specific. If it's more strategic in nature, we have the discovery session and we're able to pull out what they need help on. And another simple example, we were helping a construction company just understand that if he wants to grow to X million dollars beyond what he is today, his current infrastructure won't be able to sustain that.
Yeah.
And so we had to do it today's org chart and say, okay, if you want to 10x your revenue, can this current org chart sustain that? Well, the answer to that is no. You're going to have to add project managers, engineers, you're going to have to add salesmen, more administrators. And so we were able to help him see what he needs to do in order to scale in revenue to a certain point. And honestly, a lot of people don't understand that, what, if I want to add $5 million to my top line, that's a lot of money. What does that take if you're only at 3 million today? How can you really justify doing that if you don't have a strategic plan in place to grow and scale stepped, right? It can't just be, hey, I'm going to hire a sales guy. Let's go. Woohoo. Doesn't work like that, especially in small business. So we try to take on everything very methodically, very strategically. Again, always want to add value. And if we're not adding value, we're out. It's like, I don't want to be a burden to you. I don't want to cause more issues with us being around. So we're always very specific and very strategic on how we approach our customers, always wanting to add that value.
Okay. So I'd like to switch gears here and talk a little bit about Boost and maybe your other businesses that you've worked for. What was the hardest decision that you ever had to make in business?
Yeah. Well, there's been a few. I think the hardest decision to make is a couple of, well, there's two really primary. One is letting somebody go, I think is always a hard decision because the way I approach leadership and management is very, again, value driven. I want to add value to my people. And if we got to let them go for some reason, something happened somewhere that I probably wasn't doing my job to the degree that I could or should have been doing. So I take that very seriously. And then number two, whenever you have to close down a business, and I've had to do that personally. I've been a part of companies that have had to downsize, or a part of companies that I've walked into to been hired to restructure, and we've had to downsize and then build it back up. And so I think that whenever you have to make those kind of decisions, they should be made with a lot of forethought and empathy. They have to be made. That's just business. But to me, that's tough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, letting people go is really tough. It's not a fun part, and you always feel like you should have done something different so that
Hmm.
you didn't get to this point, and
Right.
it's a self-examination. So, what about the other side? What are the important questions that the entrepreneurs should ask themselves?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your first question. What is your why? And again, love business, done a lot of study on it. 30% of all businesses fail within the first 2 years, 50% by 5 years, 70% of businesses fail by 10 years. That's just the US metric. Not, I imagine when you get overseas, it's roughly the same. There's roughly 33 million small businesses in the US. There's about 400 million worldwide. So the number's huge. And then there's 3 to 4 million that start every year. So those numbers are pretty massive. So when you look at the number of businesses, the numbers that start, and then the numbers that fail, my experience when I dig into this, I see that there's a mindset issue with the entrepreneurs, and that's knowing the difference between a lifestyle business and a growth business, understanding that if they don't have a firm direction when they start a company, it's going to be a challenge. Understanding what's valuable, what we talked about previously. And I'll give you an example of that. When I started my construction company, when I started it, what was valuable was very different than what it was a year into the business, right? And then it became me doing everything, pouring concrete, 5 a.m., getting off work at 4, doing estimates, paying bills, invoicing, wearing every hat. And then I came to the realization how stupid that was. I needed to hire somebody to help me.
Mhm.
Well, that was hard, because I did it all. I had to train them. Then I had to trust them. And so there's this whole dynamic in small business that, I got to just dig in and do it myself, bootstrap mentality. And that's great. But eventually that becomes pretty stupid. And you have to understand that you have to learn to duplicate yourself in a way to scale your business. Now, there's some businesses that want to stay a one-man show, and that's fine. That's absolutely wonderful. There's a lot of businesses out there that do that. But for the people that really get frustrated because they can't grow, there's a mindset issue. And so to answer your question again, I think that the entrepreneur, the business owner needs to ask themselves, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
Why am I doing it? And then what am I doing? And then how am I doing it? And if you can really ask those three key questions, you can plot out pretty good a good path to growth and success in a business. You really can.
So, why, what, and how?
And how? Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. So, why is the purpose? What is the core business that we're trying to
Hmm.
build here, and how is maybe how are we different from everyone else?
Yeah. And so it's really vision, mission, and then execution. Like,
Mhm.
how am I going to execute? And part of that how and part of that why and what is really saying, okay, what's different about me? What can I bring to the table? When I started my concrete company, I wanted to be really professional. I grew up in it, and I saw all the subcontractors that my dad was around and all the builders. And the one thing I picked up on is that there wasn't very many people that handled themselves very professionally. It was construction.
Mhm.
You could show up dirty, you could yell and scream at people. It was all just kind of, that was the culture of construction.
Mhm.
When I started my business, I was like, no way. I'm going to build a portfolio I can hand out to potential customers. My truck's going to be clean. I'm going to dress nice. I mean, I had this thought in my head that I was going to be professional, and I did it, and it worked for me. But I think back, and there's probably 25 other things I probably should have focused on. But you learn, it worked. So I think that you gotta find what that is that sets you apart, what makes you special.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain clientele that wants to deal with professional contractors, and they are willing to pay
Yeah.
premium. So it probably is not a bad differentiator. I had a client who was a fire water remediation company, and for them, one of the core values was professionalism, because it was a
Yeah.
table stakes thing. They were looking for people who could present themselves, who could talk
Hmm.
to the owner, who would clean up after themselves, and that's a huge differentiator for them.
Yeah, it really is. That's low hanging fruit in construction nowadays, unfortunately, but very true.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the POV podcast.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's the Pursuit of Value podcast, and this is something that was sparked in me back in 2020, the 2021, the COVID days, and really just wanted to take everything that I've learned, what I learned growing up, what I learned in business, and I just wanted to share it. And so to me, the thing that always rings in my head is, how do you pursue value? Like, what is, and there's a fundamental first question to that is define value. What is that? And in the context of business, what's valuable to you, Steve, it could be very different to what's valuable to me because it is subjective. But what I really want business owners specifically to focus on and understand is for them to sit down and ask themselves that question, like, what is valuable to me today in my company? Is it growth? Is it lifestyle? Is it my employees? What is it? Service? What is it? And then if they can focus on that and then come up with a strategic plan to execute on that each and every day, man, there's no reason why businesses should fail at the rate that they do. And that's my heart. I really don't like looking at those statistics and seeing that 30% fail in 2 years and 50% because I've lived through that. I remember my dad going through some hard times during the recession of the 80s. I went through hard times in 2008, when that happened. And there's nothing harder or worse for a person to have to go through a business that is not succeeding. It's very challenging, very difficult. And so the Pursuit of Value podcast is just my way of sharing that. And so season 1 was all about the business owner mindset. Season 2, we're four sessions in, and that's about company culture. The next season, we'll be talking about strategic execution. So we're talking about things that most don't think about, because I know company culture is kind of a buzzword, but do you really understand what creates a company culture? Like personal character, integrity. There's these things that are these intangible things that a lot of people don't necessarily think about when they're thinking about their culture. And then the business owner mindset in season 1, that was a fun one because how you view yourself and your business is critical to success.
Well, definitely, and I resonate with this whole idea of eliminating these business failures. I call it business COVID, and according to my math, it's 180,000 businesses that fail, that disappear each year.
Mhm.
Between 10 and 250 million, 250 people. It's about 70 million of such businesses. And I believe that the right approach of coaching and advising, all those companies could be saved. And that would create 2 million jobs a year and 4%
Mhm.
boost to the
Yeah,
GDP. So
right. Yeah.
uh, that's awesome. So if people would like to learn about your podcast, learn
Mhm.
about your company Boost or yourself, or want to reach out, where should they go and where can they find you?
Yeah. So for the POV podcast, it's just that, thepovpodcast.com. Go to the website. We've got the episodes there. We got blogs there, all the resources. We have a free ebook that's on the website. For Boost, it's bu-st.com, bu-st.com, and they can reach out to us there. And then obviously Marcus Hamaker on LinkedIn.
Well, definitely check out Marcus. He has got great concepts around growing businesses and the 5 areas of the alignment, communication, SOPs, processes,
Mhm.
change management, and project controls. I love this. I have not thought about number 4 and number 5, and they are super important.
Yeah,
It really is true that people hate change, and it's an effort to get them to embrace it. It's a whole project in itself.
absolutely. Yeah.
So love the message. So if you're listening to this and you want to learn more, then go and check out boost.com, spelled in a unique way. And Marcus Hamaker, CEO of Boost, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And those of you listening out there, if you enjoyed it, please follow us on YouTube, review us on Apple Podcasts, and stay tuned because every week we come with a new episode and with an exciting entrepreneur talking to us. So thank you, Marcus, for coming, and thanks for listening.